More than me, I think we have an amazing panel here, and I would love to. This first of all, this is my honor and privilege to be here on this stage to introduce a panel like this. And I have been associated with the Product Leaders Forum for last 3.5, 4 years, and honestly, the kind of energy and the kind of engagement that this forum drives is just amazing. Who would believe that this is actually run by volunteers? I mean, that's so big round of applause for all the PLF volunteers who are here. I think this is great. They do this beyond their day job. I know Pinkesh highlighted this, but this is just one more mention of that. Uh, so I take a seat and I'll invite the panel. And as you know, the main theme for this discussion today is carrying on from the previous discussion that Pinkesh led on from being a product manager as you rise up the rank up to the CPO level, the Chief Product Officer. What does it really mean? The how and what and why of CPO. So we'll try and do a bit of that here. So my first panelist is Sharat Bulusu. And Sharat is a product management leader with a global experience in e-commerce. He has been in media and advertising as well, built products, product teams, and has also been in a hypergrowth mode in transformation role. Currently, he's applying all of this, as he says, in Myntra, and learning a ton along way. He's an ex-Googler who has been in product management for much more than a decade, or more than that, okay. A graduate from University of Baroda and masters from Texas A&M. Please join me in welcoming Sharat and give a big round of applause to him. So, by the way, Sharat did tell me over a brief discussion that he spent the whole of last night dealing with the new sale that is coming up on Myntra and all the scaling challenges that they have to deal with. So, all the best for that. Sure, please. Thank you. Thanks. Our next panelist is Rajesh. Am I audible at the back? Can you hear me at the back? No? Are you able to hear me in the back? Great, thanks. So next panelist is Rajesh. Rajesh is a graduate from Namma Bengaluru University, and he later pursued his management from IIM Calcutta. He has been at the edge of consumer internet and consumer product space all this while, and from Rediff to Book My Show, and Book My Show, by the way, when he was there, he told me at that time it was in the very early formative years. So we probably get some insight from him on that side. And then he moved on to head the product and growth for Freecharge. And he's been in the shoes of the Chief Product Officer for Zoomcar for the last 2.5 years. And Zoomcar, as you know, has been on the Zoom, as we say. And he's been the brain behind it all this while. So please join me welcoming him on the stage. Thank you. Our next panelist is a graduate from Namma Bengaluru University again. And she says that she is actually in a boring industry, but I don't believe so, because the data suggests that probably the kind of transactions happening on her products are in the tune of trillions of dollars. So I mean, that's something. So welcome Shalini. She's a curious thinker with a passion for product and has had an opportunity over the last couple of decades to continuously gain key strategic leadership excellence. And she's been really leading that in capital market, wealth management, and also the asset management verticals. Right? At the cutting edge of fintech, I think this is the ultimate that it gets, where she's leading this as executive vice president at Broadridge. So welcome on the panel. By the way, she's also a hallmark for anyone here in the room who thinks that you can't build a career in one company and move up. She spent 18 years, I think 18 years in Broadridge and grown through the ranks. So welcome on the panel. Our next panelist is Somu Vadali. He's the Chief Data and Digital Product Officer at Future Group. He started his career with embedding himself deep into technology and technology product management. I met up with him last year, just around the PLF previous year, and have been really amazed by the way he's been leading these teams. He started out with Alcatel Lucent, which is now Nokia. By the way, he has been at the cusp of most of these acquisition IPOs you can imagine, and he's been really in the middle of it. He moved on to lead a product management team in QNX and research. and research in motion. And he has been a VP of SaaS products at Imprivita, which also went IPO. So I think we might get some good insights from that perspective. And with a deep experience in Silicon Valley, he's now back here, and he's leading the data and product group at Future Group. And a lot of the brands that he really deals with, we deal with day in, day out. So please welcome Somu Wadali. And I would like to introduce the last panelist. I know he's not in here. Has he reached? Oh, he's there. Right. Amazing. Hi, Ranjit. So he's our last panelist. And after graduating from VTU, he pursued his career in engineering with HCL and then went on to do his MBA from IIM Kozhikode. And post that, he's been deepening his experience in product management all this while. And interesting thing is, he's actually touched a lot of products that we all deal with. So from gaming apps in Verizon to multimedia platforms, in July system, Zynga, and Hike Messengers. And now, I'd like to say this, that even our children are experiencing your products. And by the way, he's not old. He's probably much younger than any one of us here. He is the Chief Product Officer at Byju's. So please welcome Ranjit. So, first of all, thanks so much for being in. I'm really honored and privileged to be on this panel, and this is probably a very eminent panel. Carrying forward from the previous discussion, I know Bala talked about dance, and probably we are all the next dancers in this whole mix of things. So, would love to bring up some of those perspectives as we move along. So, my first question to Somu, you, and Ranjit. What does a day look like for a chief product officer? And I mean, what are the primary responsibilities that you really deal with day in, day out? I mean, this seems to be a fascinating role, and how does that really shape up as you move along?
Right. So, at a larger sense, we're responsible for the product vision, the strategy, product design, and all of that, right? So that's clearly understood because that's what the product management function is driving. And as the product leader for the function, you're supposed to kind of be responsible for all of those facets. But from the perspective of a typical day, right, we generally tend to kind of classify it into 5 segments. As a product leader, you're supposed to be spending some time understanding your users. So a fair amount of the day is spent in terms of talking to users, getting more perspectives, spending time with the customer support team as well, because that and the sales team probably gives you the best insights as to what users really need. Time spent in terms of market analysis and getting to know what competition is up to and what's happening in the larger ecosystem as well, to be prepared for that. Some part of it is also very executive in the sense that you kind of interact with the rest of the C staff, get to see whether the strategic objectives are being aligned, whether certain grease needs to be applied to ensure that your goals are being moved a lot more faster. The fourth element, which is very critical as you kind of go higher up in the product management function, is that as a cross-functional leader, you are responsible for ensuring that you interact with all of the teams which are counting on the products coming out in great shape. This could be logistics, operations, sales. Anybody who's in the company is counting upon the product and the productization to kind of combine, enable them to be successful. So a fair amount of time is actually spent in terms of interacting with the internal teams as well. And last but not the least, which is something that's very critical and very close to heart for most product leaders, is the fact that you spend a lot of time in terms of building that internal culture and that culture of excellence, where you spend time with your teams in terms of doing product reviews, in terms of giving them guidance, ensuring that the product knowledge is disseminating across the organization, that it's not happening in silos, and that there's a language of productization, of product management, which is becoming a norm, right? The way that you look at product features, the way that you understand what you learned from it, and how you do the post-mortem analysis and ensure that the company is marching down the path of both ensuring there's optimization on your current products and that you're thinking about innovation on the future products as well. So that's a packed week. It's probably not a typical day, but across the week, this is how the time gets divided.
And is that a 5-day week, or is it more than a 5-day week?
Yeah, I think
that looks like a lot.
A 5-day week probably is probably not sufficient for sure, as most of us would know out here. But it's an enthralling week because there's not a dull moment. There's enough context switch happening constantly that it's quite invigorating.
What about you, Somu?
Yeah, thanks. So thanks for IPL for this opportunity, and I think, you hit it on all the points that I was, thinking of. But I would say one thing, like CPO, I never thought it's a relevant title till I got one. And after that, I started feeling like, yeah, it is, it makes sense. So, by the way, that was a joke, guys. Laugh. So I think strategy is the main thing, and I was talking to Sharath before the panel discussion. So I think one of the most important things for the product team and the head of product or whatever you call him is to set the culture of the company, because what happens is strategy is, yeah, obviously, you need to set the strategy, you need to make sure that all the business lines and all the product lines are working towards a common goal, which is basically the goal defined by the CEO and the board. I mean, that's your core, that's a stake, table stakes, like you have to do it. But other than that, there are a lot of other things that you set the tone in the company. You make sure that the resources are, divided and put on the right efforts to make. So I think that is the another most important thing that you need to think about. And also, it also depends on the context. It depends on, are you a startup? Are you an established company? And are you building your first product? I mean, when you're building your first product, probably CPO doesn't make any sense. CEO is your CPO. And so if you have multiple products, you're joining a company that's like well established and there are like 10 product lines, then you're starting as a CPO is a very different ball game compared to the one, early stage company, etc. And also location matters, right? I spent most of my time outside India, but, I think 10 years back, the product culture or product management culture in India was probably not even there. And now it is, I see a lot of talent and a lot of product managers, really good ones, in India, and which is really good. But again, there are gaps, right? So you don't have that many. For example, when you start working as a product guy in Silicon Valley, you actually learn a lot from your seniors in the teams. You'll have a lot of mentors, and there's a lot to learn, because product management cannot be taught in schools, right? IPL has done a great job, but it's not taught in an MBA program or an engineering program. It's not that easy. And also, probably they can teach strategy to some extent. Execution is something you have to learn on the ground and totally. By making mistakes and keep correcting yourself. Yeah. That comes with experience and working with people who have done it in the past. That is not there. And I think that has changed quite a bit, but still some room for improvement. And also, data-driven thinking is something that I don't see much. I mean, we still, as a culture, think that intuition is the main way to make a decision, and we always go to that business head who knows what he's talking about because he has done the business in the last 30 years the way he has done it, and it's not a bad thing. But as a product guy, we need to bring that culture into the company. The reason why I'm talking about it is the CPO will introduce these tools and this culture to the company. That's your core role.
I think that's a very interesting point. I think from the you guys both talked about building a culture and also the skill base. And if I may actually add a couple of things, and maybe that's where maybe Shalini and Rajesh, you can pitch in. On you all have built your careers, an intense career. This is not a career which is probably happening just like that. And you need to equip yourself, you need to skill yourself, and how do you really do that while you are in an intense day? And like we found out it's more than a 5-day week, right? So Mo is talking about how intense it gets as you get along. So how do you really do that? How do you what kind of upskilling? Where do you find time? Where do you see yourself doing all of that?
Thanks, Lokesh. Hello, everyone. I think great points from Somu and Ranjit. Just on this question, I want to answer it in a couple of ways. One is as a leader, and one is when I began my journey several years ago, so which I don't want to reveal, right? Because we don't want to talk about how old I am. So let's talk from a leader's perspective, right? I have probably I'm oversimplifying some of this, but for me, there are very, very basic foundational aspects when you're looking at as a product executive. I'm not getting into the titles here, can be anything. But when you're a product executive, you have product responsibilities and you have executive responsibilities. I think some of it which Somo and Ranjit spoke about. For me, the first thing that starts with on any day would be how am I building a group of effective, engaged, motivated product managers. I think that really is the goal. And that's something I have learned. And this is not how I started as a product leader. I started with, obviously, any product leader's minds has revenue, sales, customer engagement. These will always be your KPIs and KRAs. But I've realized over the last few years that it's also a place where you have to step back and you have to let really your team of product managers to drive the product thinking, right? I think that's a very, very hard part of the job, because when you're not doing it and you want a whole bunch of other individuals with their own mindset coming in and trying to do it, I think that's a very big task, right? So for me, that was part of upskilling my own self and upskilling the entire organization. We have tried several things, and one of the recent things we're looking at doing as part of this upskilling part is obviously focus on data, digital analytics kind of skills, but really on the softer cultural part of it, we are using this framework called Prime to Perform. I think most of us know that. So there is a concept of how you look at an associate's performance and a product manager's performance and what they do on a day-to-day basis. There are three elements. One is called play, second is potential, third is performance. Okay? So play, purpose, and potential, sorry. So play essentially means whatever I'm doing, is it interesting enough? If every day I come in and I do what I do is very interesting, it automatically increases my engagement levels, right? So it has a very, very direct impact on your end business. So how do we increase the play factor? I think interestingly on the product management, we are probably already very high on the play factor because we do really, really cool things, interesting things. We are always out to the market. We're talking about what's the next. While we are focused on the current, we are also talking of tomorrow. Second is purpose. So sounds very abstract and philosophical, but it comes down to day to day what I spend. We spend 15, 16 waking hours, may not be in office, but most of our active time in a job that we do. I don't think any of us want to be doing mediocre things here, right? You don't want to be wasting your active hours doing what you don't do. So finding that, the way we find a product market fit, finding a fit for what me as a product manager does with what the product does, I think that's a very big dance, referring to the older discussion, to really do that. Some of these inward factors really push you towards potential. The reason I spoke of potential is, there's a lot of folks in the organization, in this setting, who want to talk of, what does it mean to be an aspirational product leader. So for me, this is part of my own journey as well as building my own teams. And apart from this, I think the hard skills of how we develop, like each of us have come from a different backgrounds. I have come from a traditional engineering background. And how I grew into this...
I would just hold on to that thought, because that's something which we want to definitely delve with a little deeper. That how does the background really come into picture and
Sure.
what really goes in here. Rajesh, the similar question, when you really look at scaling and your perspective, and you have been in many of these startup situations, you probably are dealing with a lot of moving parts at the same time. How do you deal with that? And probably that's a question to you and Sharad both. How do you really engage and yourself and skill yourself? When you are dealing with these late night situations of how do you take your next sale out, how does that evolve?
Right. So one thing that I constantly, that keeps me at night, awake at night, and maybe it's a very controversial thing to say over here, but I feel that product as a role is very, very dispensable, right? If tomorrow, if there's a cost cutting or anything happens, product team is the first one that to go, because if you look at it, product is not really adding any immediate value, right? And I'm a product professional for 15 years, and probably I'm hitting the axe on my head, right? But the point is that this keeps me awake because I'm constantly trying to figure out how do I add the maximum value, right? And to your point, right? My whole career is being about managing chaos, right? Earlier, when I was in Book My Show, Redbus, when early days, that is more about an existential chaos. I don't know if the next month will continue or not. So what do I need to do? I need to keep on doing things. I need to keep on doing that. Keep building, right? At this stage, it is more about managing chaos at a larger scale, right? Now I'm managing chaos from board, I'm managing chaos from other competition. Now it's a strategic chaos, right? Which is also interesting. The way, in terms of skilling up, right? So the way, I would look at it is that, or at least if I look back at my career, right? What I have scaled up or what I have, the skill that I've learned is what is the visibility that I have and for how long do I have the visibility. When I'm a young product executive, I'm looking at the next 1 month, I'm looking at the next quarter. When I become a little senior, I'm looking at the next year. Now I have to look at a 3-year, 5-year horizon because I'm in all practical, for all practical purposes, running the company to a large extent, right? So I'm looking at, okay, how can Zoomcar scale for the next 5 years, right? And to just as an example, so one of the things that, it does not fall under the product purview, but what I'm doing is trying to, modify the Motor Vehicles Act that the government will pass in the next year, right? Now this, because it's a huge impact on my business. Now that's not something that is expected out of the product manager, it's not expected out of anybody, right? But the fact is that as product managers, irrespective of whatever level you are at, you're always playing a bigger role than what is mandated out of you, right? And you have to play that bigger role, right? And that could be within the organization, that could be outside the organization. Probably one of the things that we did at Redbus was how do we become thought leaders in product management, right? And that was when I was a product manager. But we used to conduct seminars like this. We used to go out and have product get-togethers just to become sort of thought leaders in that space, right? So the point is that going back to your point, so the skilling up happens in terms of A, the visibility, B, what kind of chaos can you manage, C is managing people. And again, managing people internally, externally, doesn't matter, right? Even today, when I meet people, not from the industry, but from outside, and I tell them I'm a CPO, the first question is, okay, are you a chief purchase officer? And I'm like, yeah, I'm the chief purchase officer. I'm responsible for ensuring that the customers come and keep purchasing with me, right? That is my core responsibility, right? But if I have to take a very, very internal view about what I do, I think of myself as a chief revenue officer. Because at the end of the day, product needs, and going back to the older discussion, right, where the panelists were saying that, okay, you can either be a tech-driven company or you can be a business-driven company. Every business is a business-driven company. If you're not aligned to business, then you're in the wrong organization, right? You need to be aligned to the business, irrespective of what stage it is in, right? And as product managers, you need to understand, apart from the customers, you need to understand your business. What are the core levers of the business? What are the inefficiencies of the business? One of the product core, teams that we have in Zoomcar is called the unit economics team. Now this team looks at how do I build in operation efficiency? How do I build in business efficiency? How do I ensure my on-ground staff is running more efficiently? How do I ensure my call center is running more efficiently? Again, this is not product management 101 or not under the generic product management anywhere else, right? But the point is that product management in itself is extremely fluid and can take various shapes and forms depending on the company and the scale that you are in.
Wow, that's interesting. That's I think every day looks like a challenge for all of you. How do you deal with this?
Well, so what I've realized over the course of my career is, one, everything that I started with as a product manager changes every few years. So mid-2000s, when I was dealing with product, I didn't have to worry about mobile. As we got into the late 2000s, we had to worry about it a little bit. Today, I'm sitting here at Myntra, where we do more than 90% of our revenues on mobile. So just if you think about where your customers come from, how they interact with you, how they engage with you, as the voice of the customer in the room, whether you're the CPO or anyone down in the product chain, that's probably your biggest job, right? Being the voice of the customer. You've got to constantly keep learning what's happening in that sphere. And it's exciting as well. I think if you have that learning mindset, you'll actually enjoy being a product manager as well. The second thing is, I've realized that with product management, one of the things people don't teach you as you're going up the ranks and kind of becoming a senior product professional is how you should think about managing other product managers. Product managers by default are self-starters. If they're not, they're probably not going to be very good product managers. So you're probably not going to manage them the same way you manage an operations team or a finance team, right? And this is something that no one sits you down and tells you, hey, now you become a manager of product managers. You manage these people like that. So I constantly learn from the people who work on my team. Yeah. And I think that actually makes life a lot simpler because situations like, whether it is working late night to get a release out there, whether it is dealing with a regulatory challenge that is about to just stop our business from running the next morning, you actually realize that many times the best ideas are going to come from everyone else in the room. And if you can keep an open mind about that, I think much, much easier to skill up. I think the rest of it probably just follows from experience.
Yes. And I think you brought out a very amazing point here, that especially product managers, and we have all been in in those shoes, and a lot of us in the crowd here have been in those shoes. We are passionate people, and the last thing, I mean, the first thing that comes to our mind is our product, and everything else is last. And when you have such a passionate person on the board, and you're really managing that level of energy, these are very intelligent people. And how does your ability to keep yourself up on the skills, how does that start to take shape? Do you, I mean, let's go a little more transactional. Do you pick up any learning courses on the way, or a conference like this? And what exactly do you do? And that's a question to all four of you. How do you really manage that dynamics?
Look, at some point you've got to accept that the people who are coming in after you are going to be smarter than you. And so I have no illusion that I'm not going to become the next
Absolutely.
amazing data scientist or Android programmer, or for that matter, even the best product manager, right? So the value I can offer my team is the benefit of what are the mistakes I've made, what are the patterns I've recognized, and help guide them. But I think beyond a certain point, you shouldn't be in the race of saying, I'm going to be the smartest data guy in the room, or the smartest technical product manager in the room, or whatever form your business requires you to take, right? And the day you have that realization, I think you'll manage your product teams very, very differently. But otherwise, I think even if you try, you're going to lose. As your age advances, your ability to learn
I know
fast
Somu is itching to answer that question as well.
Over to you.
No, I completely agree. I think you hit it on the nail when you said, about people coming after you and all that. Great points. But I think one thing is one of the CPO responsibilities, or any leader responsibilities, is to build the right team and have the right mix. We talked about it before the meeting panel. So it's like I think India has a tendency to box or find people with engineering and MBA and call them product managers. Or you'll see mostly those people in the audience and everywhere you go in India. And also people who basically don't know what they're doing in the company, they move them into product management team. That happens a lot, and in big companies. And which is fine, but I think as a leader, you have the responsibility to think about it, because if you look at Apple and Facebook, they're hiring English majors, they're hiring psychology majors, especially when you're doing a lot of B2C, and our friend can talk about it. So a lot of these B2C and a lot of these products that we're building, you need to think a lot about psychology and change behavior, behavioral economics, and these things are like you will never learn as an engineer or going to ISB or IIM. You're not going to learn those skills. So those are really important. And also having a good mix, gender mix, and having a good mix of backgrounds and levels, to his point, right? You need to have someone fresh out of school too on the team, in addition to someone with 15 years of product experience. So looking at all those things, these are all the complex things that you deal with as a CPO. Also, there'll be a lot of unexpected things that happen that you probably don't have under your control, or you don't expect. So I think in a nutshell, that is what is the CPO role is.
I think that ties back to the point that Shalini, you also brought out on the background, right? I know in one of our discussions we were talking about what background really makes you more successful as a chief product officer. And I think the previous panel also touched upon this, that as you're growing through the ranks, there are people who are coming in from engineering background, there are people coming from non-engineering background. I think you made the exact same point. Is there any pattern that you see as a CPO, that where exactly are your most talented people coming from?
I think it's a journey. What I mean by that is product management itself is a growing discipline. Globally, there have been very set standards, again, based on sectors, it is changing. For example, you take a publishing company like Fairfax. They're just discovering what is product management today. So it's West versus East is probably one paradigm, but beyond that also, I think product management is a growing discipline. I think we should all acknowledge that. Which means as a room full of product managers or product enthusiasts, we have a lot of opportunity to evolve the discipline, is how I think about it. Yes, it started with a whole bunch of engineers growing into product function, or somebody who founded the idea became the chief product officer versus chief CEO. That's because that's the kind of community we have built. But today we have a community of a huge thriving community just within Bangalore of designers. Amazing. I mean, every day I learn when I meet up with these design firms, right? I think they have a great path into product management, almost a lateral entry. And anybody with a strategic background, and in my own organization, you won't believe, a lot of operations associates, folks who do business process operations, very senior business process operations, they're closest to the customers. They themselves are customers in many cases, and they understand really nitty-gritty of what works and what doesn't work. They have a great path towards product management. So there is a lot of intersection happening in product management. So I believe it's a huge land of opportunity. At the same time, even from a skill set standpoint, we are trying out different things. For example, beyond the traditional associates, we are also looking at how do we reach out to associates from a very different sector. For example, nothing related to a software technology sector.
Oh, you bring in somebody totally different?
Absolutely different. And they're probably there for 30, 40 years doing a certain thing. Defense organizations. See, what I do is fintech, but at the same time, what I'm looking for core values are, it's enterprise platforms, which means robustness and stability and accuracy and 99.99% kind of availability. So these are things you see in these large organizations. The kind of discipline and practice that they bring in, that's a tremendous value. So I think this is a kind of melting pot right now, and we all in this room have an opportunity to really grow it. So that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Actually, taking the question back to you, Ranjit, on how does it differ when you look at a set organization versus a startup? And how does the CPO role, and that's probably a question where this whole panel can actually add a lot of value. How does that differ when you look at a startup? And I just want to layer that question a little bit with one more angle there. Most startups, the CEO themselves are actually the product managers, right? So they are at heart the product managers. How do you deal with that dynamics as a chief product officer and as a head of products? How does that work? I mean, and give us some insights on that.
Sure. Right, so in most startups, I think the CEOs or the founders who kind of went on to kind of set up the company itself were on a mission. They were trying to solve a specific problem, so they spent significant amount of mind space in terms of thinking about the problem, right? So they've been functioning as product guys. They've looked at the market, they've seen an opportunity, they've made a business case, and they probably came up with the first set of POCs on their own, right? So they've been wearing the product hat for all practical purposes. But at any point of time, the startup is in the lookout for product market fit, and at some point of time, the CEOs believe that I need some extra help. I need somebody who's probably done this in a structured fashion to come by and ensure that we're not just throwing darts, that we have some sort of a roadmap, some sort of a structured approach to being able to crack and win at our goals. And that's where usually you kind of get a product leader in. And it's there, I don't think so titles really matter. It's just somebody's onus is to ensure that the product market fit kind of comes by. Again, it's not a single person's role because the product person can think about some aspects of it. There is business model, there is marketing, there are other aspects that come together to ensure that the product market fit kind of comes by. So the CEO then tends to kind of have this mix of 3 or 4 folks around him to be able to kind of work towards the product market fit. So that's essentially the sort of role that you play in an early stage startup. Say till a Series A, Series B. Once you have the growth money, then you kind of are sure of the product market fit to a large extent. Then it's about scale, then it's about ensuring that the success is repeatable, it's scalable. That's when then the organizational leadership aspect comes into picture, where you're now getting a lot more folks in, there are a lot more teams, all of them large sized. There's a risk of them operating in silos, not being aligned. And that's where the organizational leadership then comes in. There you probably need a true product leader who's probably done that for so many years and can handle that scale, right? So that's where the transition, I think, moves smooth from a startup to a larger organization.
Just to add to that, I think in early startups, it's not just the CEO; it's everybody is a product manager, right? So the developer, right? The business development, whatever team. I mean, even if you're like 4 or 5 guys, everybody has to be a product manager, because as we keep on saying, right, the product manager wears the consumer hat, and if your first 10 employees are not all product managers, then it's a big problem, because then there is a huge market and disconnect, between market or between what the customer is requiring versus what you're building. Right? So, well, obviously CEO will help, or the founder will help you drive and negotiate some of those things, but everybody has to wear the, hat of the product manager. And one of the things that I always keep telling my product managers is that the single most biggest responsibility for you, what you are responsible for are your stakeholders of time, and not just your time, your stakeholders for the entire organization's time, right? And that does not change when it's just a small company or a large company, right? When you're a small company, it is all the more important that you're working on the right things, because when you're early, it is so easy to get get sidetracked and just build random cool things which you probably don't add any value, right? Yeah. So that's what I've seen works best. Yeah.
So I've kind of had to go through that journey, right, of both being the CPO at a small startup and also do that kind of role in a larger company. The big difference I found is that in a large company, the role of the product manager, or for that matter, the CPO or any senior product role, it's already been accepted and internalized by the organization. So all you're doing when you step in is you're gaining credibility in the organization, doing what you do best, right? So you come in, you take charge of things, you build a great team, you build a great product, do all of those things, and you earn that credibility, but you're not there proving why that role is needed. But when you go to a small startup, that gets flipped around on its head. So when I joined HouseTrip as the chief product officer, the founder, Arno, used to run product. And we almost had like this, you could call a courtship of a couple of months before I joined, where we used to sit down for a couple of hours every week and talk about random stuff, right? Like me talking about my dislike of his habit of smoking and him ribbing me about my liking of sweets or sometimes politics. The reason was that helped us establish a rapport where we could talk to each other openly. Right. And then when I came into the organization, I realized that it took a long time for everyone else to say, to your point about everybody feels a little bit like a product manager, that we'll give up that influence, that decision making to this person and the team that he's building around himself. Yeah. And that takes time, and you have to be very deliberate about it. If you expect that it'll automatically happen, it won't. Because the founder comes automatically with a sort of moral authority around what the product should stand for, what we stand for the customer. But when you come in as a professional manager, you have to earn that. Maybe it takes you 100x more effort than the founder to get that kind of credibility.
So I think this is also a function of, sorry, you had a point.
Just wanted to add to that, couple of perspectives. As he rightly said about each person is a product manager in a smaller firm. Even in larger firms, when you're starting something new, right, it's the same mentality. In fact, it's the other way around also. Every product manager should be ready to do anything that's needed. Because it's your product, your project, your initiative. If you don't have that kind of a skin in the game, I think we are naturally taking 50% chance of success out of that equation. I mean, I'm being very blunt here. Whether you have to go and talk to a customer, whether you have to sit on a support call, doesn't matter. We've got to do that. I think that's some tenacity that we need to have as a community. The second one, I don't know if you're touching upon this, a challenge that we all face, especially on the India side of things, and I'm seeing it, is when you're a captive of a large organization. So you're already dealing with a certain set of biases, certain set of organizational constructs that have been put in. You know, XYZ people somewhere would give you instructions and you're supposed to do XYZ things. So the perseverance to push across these is a real skill, and it's not something which you can be taught. You have to hear stories of people who have done it. That's not easy, and it can take even a tough guy back.
I agree.
So I think that's very critical that as product managers here, we need to understand.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And one true reality which I keep insisting to every product manager of mine is you have to be where the customer is. You can't sit 10,000 miles away and say, oh, I need everything. I want to be the one decision making in this process. If whoever is sitting next to the customer is always your most powerful guy, right? So if it's supposed to be you, you have to be there. Whether it's Uganda, South Africa, Kerala, doesn't matter. You've got to be there. And if you don't have that, I think it's kind of the wrong profession to get into.
No, I totally agree with you. In fact, at Intuit, we have that as one of the core tenets. All the product managers, they always think customer back, and whatever is right for the customer, just do that for it, for your product, and not really get bounded by the technical challenges. And most of our PMs would always be on the road to really connect with the customers, and what we call as follow me homes. And that's kind of goes from top down to across the
I
organization.
have a point to make here. So I used to work for a company called Research in Motion. I think you guys know that, BlackBerry, right? So one thing that we have seen is like, I think it has to come from the founder. The owner lies with him. What is the time when you actually let someone drive product, right? That the founder should realize that at some point that you don't have time to do all the legwork and all the crunk, all the work that needs to be done to build a successful product. It's very hard because, especially for someone who is very successful in the first round of products, they think like they know the market off the bat and the market will never change, and 15 years down the line they still know the market. So they try to make all the calls without seeing all the data and all. So you know what happened to BlackBerry, so I don't have to tell you this. So I think this is a good lesson for founders there.
Great. I know I'm getting a lot of signals from the team here. So the last question to the panel, and then we can open up for the audience questions. Do you think that the CPO role has really arrived? Product management as a profession itself is quite nascent. And look at India in the context of India, and we are dealing with products which are globally impacting the market. How do you see CTO, CEO, CPO in that triad? Decision making, we touched upon a couple of those points, but has the CPO role really arrived? What's the future predictor? Do you see CPOs becoming CEOs? Or what kind of skills do you CPOs need to go on to that road?
Right. So my take on this is this, right? I believe that we have a very unfair advantage. Product managers do, because we do have a 360-degree perspective on various things, right? And that's invaluable. We're close to the users, supposed to be close to the users and the customers and represent them. You're supposed to be understanding what the market is currently and where it's heading towards. You're a cross-functional leader, which means that you should be able to interact with all of the functional teams, which means that you should be able to connect with them, empathize with them. You have done that pretty fairly well if you kind of have grown up the ranks. And at the end of the day, you're also responsible for future-proofing the company in terms of innovation. Now with that, and if you kind of done all of those areas and been kind of focused on that gamut of areas, it's a very unfair advantage that you have in terms of being able to set the strategic vision for the company itself. So that puts you in a pole position in terms of being able to do that, right? And that's essentially the mandate of a CEO or the C-staff at the end of the day. So in that sense, I do believe the role is here to stay. You find that it's just not about building products for the users. Product management and product thinking is a way of how the company kind of functions. It's a cultural aspect. It's something that's seeping into other functions as well. I've seen sales teams and operations teams and logistics team now operate in the product way of thinking, with them having product reviews and thinking about what they learned and things like that. So it's a way of, it's a language, it's a DNA that we're building. And that way I think the product thinking style is here to stay. And as leaders, I think the CPO role also here is pretty much to stay. Yeah.
Throwing back to you, the same question.
I definitely think the role has arrived, because I see it in very non-traditional sectors, the role being really accepted. It's no longer being just pushed in for the sake of being pushed in. So I definitely think the importance of product management has really sunk in. The paths of a CPO, I think there are many. CPO to CEO is a natural choice. I think Ranjit made fantastic points. And CPO a lot of times also plays the role of a CMO. And because the marketing is so natural to you, I've seen a lot of organizations where CPO and CMO roles are kind of together. There is a very healthy conflict between CPO and CTO.
Is it healthy? It's a really healthy contract.
I'm going to keep it as healthy given the. so, so I think both have a fairly strong chance of moving up. But what CPO really gets as an advantage, going back to Ranjit's point, is the customer part of it, and more importantly, you have the pulse of what does it mean for growing the business. You're not just thinking of product. If you are an individual product leader, you're thinking of your own product. But once you get into a C-suite, you're naturally thinking of what does it mean for the growth of the business. So I really think it's a very natural path.
Sure. Any other last thoughts before we open up for the audience? Cool. How much time do we have? 2 questions. Okay.
Is this working? Okay, we can take 2 questions.
Sure.
And then remainder questions, we can keep it for the Mentor Connect session and outside maybe. All right, it's a tough choice. It's going to be a tough choice. All right, I'll probably go there. I'll take one from back and one
They're
from
at the back.
one
They're at the
from
back.
front.
Yeah. Wala has that.
Yeah.
Hey guys, great conversation. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Simplilearn. So I've got a slightly tricky question for you guys, something I personally struggle with, and I'm hoping you guys have some techniques you can share. One of the biggest challenges I have found is as a Chief Product Officer, you always are balancing the short term with the long term. And sometimes you feel, and I've done this product management at very large companies, 110,000 people companies, I've done it at 200 people companies. So the challenge I've seen in all of these is everybody in the company is focused on the 2 months, 3 month cycle. They're all looking at my quota right now, my support right now. And you're the only person fighting for the 6 month, 12 month, 18 month story. And it's very tough. You're lonely, you're alone, right? So what have you guys done, and I'd love to hear more offline, to overcome this challenge where you fight this battle against sales, support, and everybody out there who's thinking 2 months, 1 month ahead. And you're the only one saying, look, there's a 6 month, 12 month, 18 month story, and we should focus on that. Love to hear your thoughts, guys.
I think great question.
Yeah.
Do you want to take a stab at it?
Yeah, actually, very good question. And this is a problem that I've been facing forever. So I completely empathize, right? But one of the things that I think has worked well is sort of having a story, right? I mean, and you are the storytellers, right? I'm sure you guys know about that. I mean, product managers are storytellers, right? So what we do is, what I have done in the past is have like a 2-year story, right? And build a picture in terms of, okay, this is how our company is going to be there 2 years down the line, and this is the path that we have to take. But if we have to be there in 2 years, this is what we have to build right now, right? And make it a very, sort of make it like a fun story, enact it with people, just try to make it something that is easily understandable by every single person in the organization, right? Yeah. So not just your product managers, but also your developers, but also your call center agents, also your ops guys, something that everybody is completely aligned with. In a way, it's sort of making your vision more entertaining, right? And that's something that obviously that's going through multiple trials, but that I found has a better connect with the people. They understand it a lot more easier and assimilate that information better. So that's what.
Lokesh, I just want to have a quick
Sure.
feeling, okay? I just need these 5 names to meet me at the registration counter. Jai Shankar, Pallavi Kaulagi, Shivam, Mohammad Jafarullah Khan, and Kalyani. Please, can you see me at the registration immediately? Thanks.
I
So
think
very
I just want to make a twist to that question. First of all, this is something which we deal with day in, day out, the short and the long of our product roadmap and the decision making. Sales puts immense pressure. If you take those B2C scenarios and B2B scenarios, it's like really, really high pressure situation. Some perspectives from you on that.
So the reason why you can't typically argue with the short-term thing is it's very easy to throw revenue or cost in your face, and it's very difficult to argue with that. There's only one thing that you can use to argue against that, and that is using a very inspirational mission or value story. And so a concrete example of something like that is when I stand up in front of the company to talk about how the quarter that went by or the year that went by happened, I don't stand up and say, this year we're going to do $1 billion in sales. Say, this year we helped X million people look good. And behind me on the slide, what I leave is the mission that Myntra has promised. Our mission is to help people look good. And so if we can always couch the story in that language, it becomes easy for you to walk into a lot of these things and say, what have we done in the last quarter that's actually helped people look good? And if we haven't been able to change that, then we are failing in that mission. And that is a little more difficult for people to argue with than saying, well, long term, I really think technology is going to take us there, or design paradigms are changing, or some other thing is going to be important. And I think, yeah, it sounds cheesy at times, but once you've said it a few times and, you know, almost like an actor, you rehearse it, you figure out your punchlines, you just keep delivering it, it works.
Actually, our CEO, Brad Smith, he says this beautifully. The repetition doesn't ruin the prayer. You keep on repeating your vision and the mission and the story.
I tell my PMs, the day someone comes and tells me this guy's saying the same thing over and over again, that's the day you've broken through to them.
Just to add to that, right? We extend this conversation out to our customer community. Of course, I'm talking on a B2B enterprise space. Repeat the same thing, repeat the story. And once you get one or two, some of these large anchor customers to pull your vision in, you're done. You can really throw back on your revenue question, you know. So for me, I use the same technique onto the clients.
Awesome. One question, yeah, I think. Sure, go ahead.
We'll take this as a last question for now, and then so we're going to break after this, and just a quick announcement then. So we'll break after this for tea, and then 12:30 is when we start the sessions in the floor, which is floor C. So track 1, track 2, track 3 is conference 1, 2, 3 rooms. So 12:30, please try to be there in the rooms. First come, first serve basis for all the tracks. Over to you.
Thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Rahul and I work as a senior product manager with Epicor. They are into ERP solutions. So the question that I always struggle with is how much technology aware should a product manager be to drive his vision, to get things done? Because do you only focus on the end goal and the customer use case, or do you also be totally glued into the technology trends and be more, on the technical side as well to drive some of these things in technology companies?
Is it for a specific panel or some?
No, open to you guys.
Okay. What do you want to say?
Well, my answer would be yes, look well beyond what you're using today. Now, the technology part is if the product that you're building is something that's going to be delivered on the base of technology. So see, the Myntra product is not actually the Myntra app. It is the clothes that we sell.
Yeah,
the app is the delivery mechanism. So yes, I make it a point to keep myself up to date on what's happening across in 3D technology, in VR, in mobile apps, in infrastructure, etc. Of course,
if it's a functional product that ultimately has to be driven by technology.
Well, you never know where your next innovation is going to come from. Like I didn't imagine that, I was saying this to Somu while we were chatting outside, I didn't imagine that we'd crack 2D to 3D as quickly as we've done in the last couple of years. So the challenge with always doing a virtual try-on in fashion was building those 3D models that can mimic the physics of a fabric is extremely difficult and extremely expensive. That's why the special effects in animation and all of that cost millions of dollars to do. Now you can take a flat set of photographs of a piece of apparel and the 3D image can be simulated out of that. The fact that that technology is changing and that can run on this device, that knowledge is useful to have because then you could be the first guy to market with a product like that. So I definitely say it's important to stay up to date on that, but it also depends on what your product is. If your product is ceramic tiles, then be like really into understanding how ceramics are changing. So it depends on what the technology is.
And I think that's a great point where I think at Future Group you are dealing with this day in, day out, right? Which is all through our technology. You have a physical presence of the store, you have online presences, and that's probably something which you can talk about.
I think it's important, technology is important because these days everything we're building is in and around technology. But I think to what extent? I think it's just to the point where you know what's going on in the industry and what is helpful to you, and also to have a reasonable conversation with engineering. If you can reach that point, that's good enough. And having too much knowledge is also not good sometimes. That's why I was alluding to hiring people that are outside the tech and pure MBA domain, for English lit or someone. It also helps in different kind of thing. It's a good mix. You need a good mix. But these days everything is tech. So learning tech is not a bad thing, and it can be learnt. There's so much help available these days on internet to learn.
And that's coming from someone who started his career in tech and has been deeply embedded in tech. You can. Sure. Thanks so much. Thanks for being such a nice audience and really insightful questions. Thank you, panel. I mean, I think it's been great to be on this panel and a privilege. Thank you so much.